March 2, 1998, a cold gray morning in Vienna, Austria. 10-year-old Natascha Kampusch leaves her home for school, her backpack slung over her shoulder, her mind on nothing more than the routine of a school day. She waves goodbye to her mother, turns the corner, and vanishes. No one sees her again for over 8 years. But this is not a simple case of disappearance. What unfolded in the years that followed would shock the world. A story of unimaginable captivity, survival, and one young girl's relentless fight for freedom. Taken in broad daylight, she would endure a nightmare that few could comprehend, held by a man determined to erase her identity, her humanity, and her hope. How does someone survive when the walls close in, when the days blur into years, and when every sound could mean danger? This is the story of Natascha Kampusch, a story of courage in the face of unthinkable cruelty, and the extraordinary strength of the human spirit. In the late 1990s, Vienna, Austria was a city alive with the rhythm of everyday life. Streets buzzed with commuters, shopkeepers greeted regulars, and children hurried to school, their laughter echoing through the crisp morning air. Among them was 10-year-old Natascha Kampusch, a bright, curious girl with an infectious smile. She was her parents' youngest, a dreamer with a love for books and a fascination with the world around her. On the morning of March 2, 1998, like countless other mornings, Natascha put on her coat, packed her school bag, and stepped out the door. It was a journey of less than half a kilometer to her bus stop, a short walk she had taken many times before. She waved goodbye to her mother, unaware that this simple act of routine would mark the beginning of an unimaginable ordeal. When Natascha didn't arrive at school that day, concern quickly to alarm. Calls were made, and soon the local police were involved. Her parents, desperate and frantic, retraced her steps, searching for any clue as to where she might be. But there were no signs, no dropped belongings, no witnesses. It was as if she had vanished into thin air. The disappearance of a child gripped Vienna in fear. Posters of Natascha's smiling face appeared on lampposts and bulletin boards across the city. Her mother made tearful pleas on television, urging anyone with information to come forward. The nation held its breath as search parties combed through parks, alleys, and abandoned buildings. But what no one knew was that Natascha had been taken just meters from her home. She had been forced into a white van in broad daylight by a man who had been watching her, waiting for the right moment to strike. By the time the search began, she was already far away, hidden in a secret cellar, a place designed to ensure she would never be found. It happened in an instant. As Natascha walked toward her bus stop, a white van pulled up beside her. The man inside was Wolfgang Priklopil, a 35-year-old communications technician. He had spent months planning this moment, calculating every detail to ensure he would not be caught. Within seconds, he forced Natascha into the vehicle, silencing her cries with threats and overpowering strength. No one suspected that Natascha was in the car, threats down. Behind its tinted windows, a young girl's life was being stolen. Priklopil brought her to his home in the quiet village of Strasshof, just outside the city. It was here that his years of meticulous preparation would be revealed. Beneath his garage lay a hidden cellar, accessible only through a concealed trapdoor. The room, no larger than 5 square meters, was soundproof, windowless, and fortified with reinforced concrete. It was a space designed to ensure that no one would ever hear Natascha's cries or even suspect she was there. For the next 3,096 days, over 8 years, this cellar became Natascha's world. A single bed, a toilet, and dim lighting were all she had. The walls closed in, thick with silence, isolating her from the life she had known. She was no longer a 10-year-old girl on her way to school. She was now a prisoner, at the mercy of a man whose intentions were as calculated as they were terrifying. Behind the heavy, locked door, time stood still. For Natascha Kampusch, each moment stretched into hours, each day blurred into the next. The world outside moved on, unaware of the young girl trapped just meters away from ordinary life. She was cut off from everything, her family, her friends, the childhood she had been living only hours before her abduction. How does someone endure such an existence? How does a 10-year-old girl find the strength to keep hope alive in a space so devoid of light, sound, or freedom? Natascha was not only fighting for survival, but also battling the psychological torment of isolation, manipulation, and fear. Yet even in the darkness of her prison, there were sparks of resilience. Natascha was no ordinary victim. Beneath the surface, she was calculating, observing, and quietly finding ways to preserve her identity and humanity. But how could she possibly outsmart her captor, a man who had prepared for every possibility? And what would it take for her to finally escape? What would be the turning point in a captivity that seemed unbreakable? The answers lie in a remarkable journey, a story of ingenuity, courage, and the unyielding will to survive. In the first 6 months of her captivity, Natascha's world was confined to the cold, damp walls of the cellar. Days began and ended without light, her only sense of time dictated by the routines of her captor. Meals were brought to her on a strict schedule, always under Priklopil's watchful eye. She was forbidden to speak unless spoken to, and any sign of defiance was met with swift punishment. Over time, Priklopil began to expand the limits of her captivity. She was occasionally allowed out of the cellar, but only under his strict control. Each movement she made was monitored, each action scrutinized. She was given small privileges, a book, a puzzle, but these were tools of control, designed to create an illusion of trust. Priklopil's presence was constant and oppressive. He claimed the house was rigged with explosives, threatening that any attempt to flee would result in both their deaths. Whether this was true or not, Natascha could not afford to take the risk. His threats were calculated, not just to instill fear, but to convince her that freedom was impossible. The psychological pressure was relentless. Priklopil sought to break her spirit, to make her believe that her world began and ended with him. But what he didn't realize was that beneath the surface, Natascha was silently resisting. Every word, every threat, every act of control only strengthened her resolve to one day escape. Amidst the crushing isolation of captivity, Natascha Kampusch found ways to resist the despair that threatened to consume her. Priklopil allowed her limited access to books and television, tools meant to pacify her, to make her more compliant. But for Natascha, they became lifelines. She devoured every book she was given, turning each page into a world she could no longer touch, keeping her connected to the idea of life beyond the walls. In those moments of solitude, she allowed herself to imagine freedom. Her mind became her refuge, a place where she could plan, dream, and strategize. She studied her captor's habits, his routines, his weaknesses, cataloging every detail that might one day help her escape. When Priklopil occasionally brought her to the upper levels of the house, she would glance through a small window, catching fleeting glimpses of the outside world. The sky, the trees, the distant hum of cars, they all reminded her of what she was fighting for. Every glance reinforced her determination. Every moment of fresh air reminded her that freedom was worth the risk. Natascha wasn't just surviving, she was preparing. She knew that one day the opportunity would come, and when it did, she would be ready. August 23, 2006. After 8 long years in captivity, a moment of chance presented itself. On this day, Priklopil assigned Natascha a task that brought her outside, a rare occurrence. She was instructed to clean his white van in the garden, the very vehicle that had taken her from her life so many years ago. For Natascha, this was more than just a chore. It was a glimpse of the freedom she had been denied for so long. She worked methodically, her eyes scanning her surroundings, her mind calculating the risks. The gate stood nearby, slightly ajar, a sight she had only dreamed of. Then the moment came. Prickapill's phone rang, and he stepped inside the house to answer it. For the first time in years, she was alone, unguarded. Her heart raced as she realized what was happening. This was the opportunity she had been waiting for. There would be no second chances. Without hesitation, Natascha dropped everything and ran. She darted through the open gate, her bare feet pounding the ground as she fled through neighboring gardens and streets. Fear coursed through her veins, but so did determination. With every step, she put more distance between herself and the prison that had held her for so long. Natascha didn't look back. She couldn't. Her only focus was on reaching safety, on finding someone, anyone, who could help her. For the first time in over 8 years, she was free. Terrified but resolute, Natascha ran until she found herself outside a neighbor's home. She banged on the window, her voice trembling but firm as she declared the words that would change everything. "I am Natascha Kampusch." For a moment there was silence, a stunned disbelief at the name that had haunted headlines for nearly a decade. Then, the neighbor called the authorities. Within minutes, police arrived at the scene. Natascha was taken into protective custody, her identity confirmed, and the news spread like wildfire. The girl who had been missing for 8 years had finally been found. Her captor's carefully constructed web of control had been shattered by a single act of courage. As Natascha was led to safety, Wolfgang Prickapil realized the walls were closing in. Desperate to avoid capture, he fled his home, eventually taking his own life by stepping in front of a train. His death marked the end of a harrowing chapter, but for Natascha, it was only the beginning of a long road to healing. Reunited with her family, Natascha faced an overwhelming mix of relief, joy, and the daunting task of rebuilding her life. The world she returned to was vastly different from the one she had left as a child. She was now an 18-year-old woman, thrust into the public eye and forced to navigate the scrutiny of a media that couldn't look away. Despite the challenges, Natascha showed a remarkable strength of character. At a press conference, she spoke with grace and composure, reflecting on the years she had endured. "I spared myself many things," she said. "I did not start smoking or drinking, and I did not hang out in bad company." Her words were a testament to her resilience, a reminder that even in the darkest moments, she had held on to her sense of self. Natascha Kampusch was not just a triumph over captivity. It was a story of the unyielding power of the human spirit, a beacon of hope for anyone facing the unimaginable. Natascha Kampusch's story is one of unimaginable hardship and extraordinary resilience. From the moment she was taken as a child to the day she bravely reclaimed her freedom, her journey is a testament to the unbreakable strength of the human spirit. Through years of isolation and fear, she never lost hope, never stopped believing in the possibility of a better future. Her courage, even in the face of such overwhelming adversity, serves as a powerful reminder. The will to survive and the determination to overcome can endure, even in the darkest of circumstances. Natascha's story inspires us to reflect on the resilience within us all. If you found this story inspiring, subscribe to our channel for more true accounts of courage and survival. And don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments below. We want to hear how this story has moved you. Together, we can keep these stories alive and honor the strength of the human spirit.